A very good morning, our dear viewers on Salt TV. This is yet another Saturday. We are remaining with only 5 days, the days we've been waiting for the crusade in Mbarara. Next Friday, all roads will be leading to Mbarara, where all people from Western Uganda and all over the world, where we shall be praying for the nation, praying for ourselves, praying for everyone. So we welcome you on that very day in Mbarara Kacheka Stadium. Last year we were in Kacheka and we are going back to Kacheka. So the people of Mbarara and Tungamo, Kabal and other parts that is near to that district, please, we welcome you on that very day. Very many things have happened during the day, during the week, and the 7 days that we are counting today. So we are coming back here for the dialogue. I'm sitting in for Apollo Tusime. My name is Moses Kajangu. We are in the studios with eminent people to debate issues that has happened during the week, and we welcome you, all of you, to participate in the dialogue. And to start with, I have a guest with me, a doctor whom you all know that he is ever with the dialogue. He's a dialoguee here every Saturday. And before I go far to introduce as many things that we are likely to discuss today, let me first welcome our guest who is with us already. Doctor.
Yeah, good morning to our esteemed viewers. It is always good to be here. We thank God that He has kept you alive, and we are to deliberate together. And of course, my thank you to Salt Media, and of course my host, who always give us this space to interact with the country. So looking forward to having 2 hours of serious engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Doctor is a researcher and at the same time is a political analyst who has been following issues in our country, Uganda. And I've known Doctor for a period of time as a researcher with African Leadership Institute. That is a body that assesses the members of parliament, how they performed. I don't know, of recent we need to find out the performance of our legislature, because they are going for the 3rd year, that is the 3rd session of parliament. And we need also to find out from you, maybe at an appropriate time you will be telling us exactly how, when should we expect a report the performance of our members of parliament. A lot of things have happened. We have seen Parliament of Uganda passing the national budget. Under the Finance Amendment Act, before 31st of May, the budget has to be presented on the floor of Parliament. Unlike in the past, where budget used to be read then dispersed, like in October. So, but this, the budget is already, we know what is contained, so we shall be debating about that issue in time to come. And in Parliament, we have also seen many things being passed on the floor of Parliament. Various bills have been passed, and another controversial, I would call it a controversial bill, the Marriage and Divorce Act bill is also being proposed to be brought back on the 11th Parliament, because if you could recall, this bill has been on the floor of Parliament, on the order paper of Parliament for several years, since 1960, if I'm not mistaken. And people thought that with the former Speaker of Parliament, Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, people were expecting that by that time she would use her powers as a Speaker of Parliament, being a woman, that this bill would be passed into an act of Parliament. But it was again removed from the floor of Parliament, and it did not see the wish of the people who wanted it to be passed on as an act of Parliament. So we are seeing the former Minister of Health, former Minister of Mineral, and the woman member of Parliament for Kitu in Tororo District, Honorable Sarah Opendi, is proposing to bring that bill back on the floor of Parliament. So let's see how main legislatures are going to handle. Again, we see a lot of violence in the country as far as misuse of gun is being practiced. And we have very many laws that protect Ugandans We have very many things that we see happening in the country, but the misuse of a gun is still a problem. So we've been experiencing in the past years whereby these wrong people go kill people, the likes of the late Apiriga and the police officers who were killed by that time, and the way how they were killed is totally different from what is happening. So for our topic today, which we are going to start debating today, we want to look at the issue, the problem of misuse of gun, Mr. Gerard, in the country. And by the time our former minister was killed, Honorable the late Engola, State Minister for Labor, he was killed in that way, but we thought that if something was for first time or something like that. But we see many of these incidences occurring day by day, day by day. And by the time our minister was killed by Sergeant Sabiti, we are seeing about 5 or 6 people being killed in the same way. Where are we heading?
You know, every time we discuss this story, it's quite disturbing. First of all, for the benefit of the viewers, I want to state that Uganda has robust laws on gun control. Under the UPDF Act, if you are caught with guns, illegal store, military store,
yes, you
can be tried in the court martial, and there is evidence that government has tried to arrest those culprits and take them to court martial and charge them under the UPDF Act. We have also seen that the country has the National Action Plan on guns and small and light weapons. This is quite old. I think it was enacted around 2007 to ensure that there is a systematic way of ensuring that these guns don't find their way in wrong hands and used to commit crime. But annoyingly, last year, police destroyed about 378 illegal guns. These were recovered from areas such as Rwenzori, Kampala, Karamoja, and northern Uganda. And if you witness, these are some of the places that have experienced gun violence recently and also previously because of rebellion and things like that. And now, where is the challenge also? Now, what we are seeing, the trend seems to be shifting, that the guns being used are not actually illegal guns, but these are legal guns in the hands of people who are authorized by law to hold these hands. I will pick out cases of the Honorable Engola. Of course, this was a UPDF gun. We look at cases like Machindi the other day. These are private security guards. These guns that they use are controlled, that are given to them by police, and these security firms are supposed to be accountable. So there is reckless handling of guns or people in possession of these weapons by law, also taking the law in their hands and trying to solve personal issues using these authorized guns that they are holding. The case of Mbarara yesterday, these were, I think, a police gun that was used to gun down, if I'm to take the statement of the police correctly. So now we are having a challenge that not all the weapons that are being used are illegal. Some are legal but used unlawfully by people in security forces. So it is a challenge. Maybe government needs to go back and review the action plan on guns and small weapons, and then two, government needs to go back and look at whether the strategies that are put in place to control these guns, and also issues of training. We have seen Mirombo, the one whose gun was stolen and used by Constable Wawire to kill someone, okay, to kill the Indian businessman. We see that there was just poor handle, negligence. You have procedures of keeping the gun that you lawfully possess, but you leave it in a room, and therefore you make yourself vulnerable, that a private Wawire is able to go and pick it and go and use it to commit a crime. So maybe some of the people in our forces, like I'm really disturbed with the time these private security guards take for training. 2-3 weeks in training, and they're supposed to come and take charge of the security of people and their property. So if someone is angry, things will turn the gun on themselves. So in a nutshell, that's how I observe this issue of gun violence in the country.
Doctor, I think with the incident of yesterday, I think it was like more of a joke, whereby an officer, UPDF officer, taking a selfie. You always see what they call selfie, somebody taking a picture with somebody's wife. And the punishment is the police officer to use a gun to shoot his colleague because of taking a picture with a wife. Isn't there other means somebody could have used to cool down such a temper?
I actually saw the police spokesperson saying maybe some of these security people need to be trained on how to manage anger management issues, because when it comes to matters of love, some people who have no guns can easily use stones, but this one used the gun because it is within his reach and he thinks it can solve the problem quickly. So issues of training, issues of anger management, issues of trauma, people who are traumatized and then they are continuing to hold the guns. If you got some of these forces, you can look at individuals and say, but this one, there's a time I was involved in a traffic matter around the Bwaise on Kawempe Road. You know, after delivering some medicine to my auntie, I wanted to go turn and then rejoin the northern bypass. But because I'd taken long without using that, so I made a turn, and in the process I slowed the movement of cars. The way guys in 99 behaved as if I was a robber. They jumped Kamata Uyo, this one, they opened the car door, this one, you know, about 6 guns on me. I had not done anything. This is something that needed an armed traffic officer to deal with me. So there are issues with anger management, how our officers are trained, and I think this should be addressed.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's a sunny Saturday, and outside there the weather is mostly friendly. And according to scientists, they are saying that this dry or this sunny season might go up to 28. So people need to prepare themselves out there. Drink water, take enough water so that you don't get dehydrated. In the studios again, I'm joined by another distinguished guest and a lawyer by training. You know, these people call themselves the land. But for us, we are also putting a disclaimer today that we are also the informed in the broadcasting media. In the studios, I'm joined by Counsel Simon Senyonga. Great to first have a say to our viewers out there, and we welcome you in the studios.
Thank you very much, my brother, for hosting me, and also my distinguished brother here, who has made very able submissions. My name is Simon Senyonga. I am not a new face on this station. I think I have made a couple of appearances. First of all, I apologize for coming in late. I've spent almost 1.5 hours in traffic jam.
Could it be as a result of the pothole?
Definitely, because I was stuck somewhere in, there's a very big pothole somewhere around Kasubi. As you're joining the bypass coming up, after as you head towards Kasubi, there are very many potholes. Then the heavy traffic after you get to the junction that heads down to Makerere, Bakuli, then going up. So I really apologize for being late.
Okay, thank you very much, Counsel, for coming in the studios. This is the dialogue. You found us in the middle discussing the issue of gun violence in the country, and you have followed exactly what has happened in the past and in the recent 10 or so days before the death of our late minister Angola, who was buried last Saturday, and we are seeing such a things happening. One of them was yesterday. We thought wouldn't see such incidents happening by use of a gun. From the legal perspective, how do you see this thing happening? And do you think that the laws of Uganda are not implemented as far as firearms is concerned, and how it should be used in the public? We are not seeing it only from the government circles, but we are also seeing it in the private sector. You have seen in Makindye, where a private guard gunned his colleague, and we are seeing the same happening in the barracks. So, from the legal perspective, where do you see Uganda's security and the use of firearm going?
I think 2 points now to make. Number one, the legal perspective is informed by a social construct, right? The perspectives that form what you would call the law. Now, in the Ugandan context, you have to appreciate that we have had a militarization of the state machinery and government institutions. So militarization, you know, when you look at the argument, say, of John Locke in terms of the construction of a social contract, the argument is that the state has the power to use force as a tool of quelling and managing the society. So what you have right now is that there is militarization of the state, and because of that, the use of force has become a tool of social engagement. So use of force has become a tool of settling scores. When somebody is underpaid, they will use militarization. When you look at the leaders responding to the challenges of the day, they use militaristic language. We shall deal with you by force. We went to the bush to fight, and all that kind of language. Now, because of that, the mentality in terms of implementing our laws is that we end up using force to solve every small score. So even the law itself would be used as a backup of a militaristic state. Number two, the question of enforcement of the laws. So Uganda, I think if I'm to quote the words of the Minister of Justice yesterday when they were making the presentation on the Uganda Human Rights Commission, the Human Rights Report, I think he said that Uganda has actually very many laws, but the question is implementation, and the question is the political goodwill. So from a political perspective, you have to look at what has been the social construct in terms of implementation of the laws, in terms of the formalization of the laws, but also secondly, how we have implemented the laws. And finally, I'll make this point that you have to be interested in the nature of the incidents which are happening. They're not just isolated incidents. They're incidents which can inform our historical perspective and how we have responded. I'll give you an example. So the late minister who was killed, if you try to match up the other incidents which have happened, whether it be Joan Kagezi, whether it be Afande Chirumira, whether it be Afande Kawesi, you will come to one conclusion, that all of these have had one common pattern, which is the failure to get to the bottom of knowing who is behind these murders. Number two, you want to read into the political context of, for example, what was the role of the late minister in terms of the war that was happening in northern Uganda and why he became a potential target. So read into the arguments of the UNFLA and the formation of the current government in 1986 and what his role was, and potentially what others have argued, his betrayal of forces from northern Uganda in the political context. We may not dwell so much on that. But then also, you want to look at the selective implementation, okay, of justice. That you have only a few individuals who are prosecuted for some of these murders, and even then it's never a logical conclusion in terms of prosecution. So I've shared for you what I would call really a general perspective. I feel that these are not issues you can only address within a legal perspective, but they are social, economic, and political.
Okay, thank you, Council, for the input for that topic today. We already now have a full quorum in the studios, the dialogue, and it's almost like 20 to 3 minutes past, and we are joined again by were another communication expert, and one of us in the studios of the Dialogue. And this is Richard Baguma. Richard Baguma, you're most welcome for this program.
Thank you. It's nice to see you in the chair for a difference.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baguma.
How do you feel?
That's what the former president said.
You see Kajangu, I've known Kajangu for quite a while. Kajangu has expanded physically. It's nice to see you in the chair.
Yes.
Good morning, our viewers. It's always a pleasure to be here and to have you following us. But like I always say, by the grace of God, really. So God is gracious. God is extremely powerful, but also too gracious. If He lifted a finger against our transgressions, I don't know how many of us would perish. So we thank God and the management of the station. And of course, seeing Werike.
And you should explain why you are late.
Yeah, I'm going to in a minute. Werike, the aspiring professor and politician. It's nice to see you. You are not a Muhefi, fortunately. Now, the new one, I don't know him.
That is Council Simon saying.
It's my opportunity to know him from today.
I think Richard normally forgets either it is selective amnesia or it is deliberate effort. I think I've appeared either once or twice with him. Perhaps I'm growing younger, and it's very recognized.
If I'm confronted, I will not say that I know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So, Mr.
but
Baguma,
why did I delay?
yes.
I lost a cousin, so the prayers were this morning at KPC North. She had a condition, this body condition where your body fights itself. And then you die, it kills you, so very unfortunately.
Yeah, we commiserate with that.
Yeah, so we had to, I decided to go and at least say sorry to my brother-in-law before I come here. That's why.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baguma. I think you found us in the middle of the topic, and we've discussed, and you've been discussing this for the last few weeks ago with the Apollo here. We are again looking at the gun violence in the country, and you saw the road which you always passed yesterday. There was also an incident which happened whereby a police constable killed a colleague in the service, that is a UPDF officer. The punishment was a photo taken with the wife of a police officer, and the only punishment was to shoot and kill the UPDF officer. So where do you see ourselves moving, Mr. Baguma, in as far as the security matters are concerned? Are Ugandans safe out there wherever they see a gun, somebody passing by with a gun, or going in the bank, you see somebody holding a gun? Are Ugandans safe in that line?
I don't know if council doesn't have a gun. Amongst the people in this our population, every lawyer of some status has now a gun. And that is also true for many other professions. Businessmen, you know. Right. Those are the guns we don't see. Then, they're the guns we see. Kajangu, you have moved around, just around us, Tanzania. The per capita on the street gun availability in this country is very high. It's as if we are constantly in active combat. So that alone creates a situation where you have a higher likelihood for incidents relating to shooting. Then I think, like I said last week, that the incident by the late Minister Ngola's bodyguard and the publicity it got is definitely going to create copycat crime. That's what I said. I still maintain that we are going to see a multiplication of publicized gun-related incidents. And we have seen this in the United States when somebody picked a gun and went to shoot in a school. Shooting in a school became quite commonplace, and not only in the US, but now elsewhere. So we are going to see this going on a bit. Now, on the other side, so we have to start asking ourselves, who gets a gun? How are they prepared to handle the gun when they get it? And this cuts across everyone, the private security agencies, everyone. And then we have a situation for quite a number of people of the feeling of hopelessness. That can be a major driver for desperate actions. It comes with anxiety. It comes with a lot of tension. You see, people talk about mental health, anxiety, hopelessness, tension. These are the actual mental health. These are the conditions that you deal with when you are talking about the health of people's minds. So I think there is a level of poor or ill health of people's mental status. And when you couple that with tools of violence, you see, the gun is dramatic. The violence that you see, and I keep telling people, just watch how many people fight. Just the videos that run around, boxing each other. See how many people hammer each other with the iron bar and the sticks, and now this little blocks, which they use to put in the socks and hit people. So that has not been as dramatic because the impact is not as much as the gun. And now, the publicity, you know, how you and me in the media relate one story to the other if they are in the same line. So wherever there will be now a gun crime, it will be very highly publicized because it is now the trending issue. The tragedy is going to be.
Before you move far, I had a small joke with the doctor before we started the program that this trend always happens in Uganda. You remember the gentleman who went at the police station and he set ablaze himself, he burnt himself, and the following week, the media spent almost the whole week reporting of the same stories of that caliber. And that's what we are seeing happening in the gun violence.
Thank you. And that's what the tragedy I was talking about. The tragedy is going to be that we are going to get used. It's going to be commonplace. And then, of course, the attention will go away. The first attention, the shortest attention span we have is for the elite and the social media. They will run away, and then the mainstream media will run away.
Yes.
So these things will keep happening. Now, so you have to think about who has the gun, how are they prepared. You have to look at the attention it is going to be given when it becomes commonplace. The other one that we need to pay attention to is that these things come in waves. Yes, you have a wave of attacking girls somewhere with, those ones are violated, they go. Then you have a wave of attacking police stations and policemen on roadblocks and on the highways. That one goes. So this thing comes in waves. So we seem to have this wave now. And there is very little explanation from whoever is an expert. So we all come here and we do suppositions, we do, so that's for me the tragedy that we are going to have. What worries everyone is that the gun used to be a tool that brings a sense of security. Although I already said that where you have higher guns, higher roadblocks is not a sign of security. It's a sign of insecurity. In fact, if you find that for you have 3 guards at your home, it means that your sense of insecurity, you have cameras, guards, electric fence, I don't know, second year what. It means your sense of insecurity is so high. Dogs, I don't know, German shepherds. That's what it means. That for you, your level of perception of threat, real or not, is too high. So there is need, Kajangu, for a comprehensive strategic thinking. It must be multi-sectoral too. What happens now is that each sector is in its own. And we've seen this in the competition among security agencies. Competition for limelight, competition for profile, competition for resources, egos. This does not help the country at all. And as I always say, it always ends up on one desk. The one who has the power to direct is one in this country. And it is him that must pay attention to this one. And as long as he's not paying attention, whether the armored vehicles around him and his children and his grandchildren and his family and they are protected, we will remain in this malaise. The problem is it will escalate to a level which it must hurt even those who think are protected.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Richard Baguma Tinka Simire. Let me go to you, the council. You must have seen the 6 questions the president asked police to answer. And in the line of answering such questions, we are seeing the same incident happening. I want you to relate the questions the president was asking the Inspector General of Police to answer when the incident happened where Afande Wabwire gunned down an Indian investor, the money lender at Raja Chambers. Well, it was just last week. If you do not go into the details, I know you as a legal person, it is already, this thing is already in court, but we want to look at the questions the president was demanding from the IGP to answer how the gun was used to Afande Wabwire to go and kill an Indian investor.
I think, first of all, is to create a juxtaposition with what Richard here has mentioned, that even those who feel protected most are the most insecure. You know Raja Chambers, right?
Yes.
It's one of the most protected places. Actually, Parliamentary Avenue must be arguably the most protected street within Kampala. You're thinking about trying to ask yourself.
In fact, Council, when you talk about protected, I would do, people wouldn't take it seriously. Because that is Parliament Avenue, where the office of the First Lady,
Yes.
Minister of Education, is.
Yeah.
We have the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs.
Yes.
Is on that very road.
Yeah.
The Inspectorate of Government, IGG, is on that road.
Yeah.
Minister of ICT, Parliament, there is another office for Parliament,
Yes.
outside, rented. It is also on that very road.
Yeah.
So when the people watching out there, I think they should know exactly what we are talking about, what we are trying to.
And they need to appreciate that, I think it was last year where there was a bomb that went off.
In fact, the opposite Raja Chamber.
Opposite Raja Chambers, within the same street. But look here, when you look at what the president asks, you want to remember at the time when there was a wave of these murders that were emerging, I think he went to Parliament and came up with what he called a strategic plan to combat crime. Not any different from the questions that he has asked. One of the biggest points that he made was we are going to make a heavy investment in the security cameras. Now I'm hoping you've looked at the footage of the shooting. Okay, now the footage of the shooting, which has been popular on social media, was not actually government footage. It was from a private camera within Raja Chambers. The next footage you see is at CPS, where the policeman is walking in after shooting. Now, the footage you don't have is the footage of from where he walks from Raja Chambers to CPS. You talk about the most protected street. You talk about the president saying there's heavy investment into the camera program, but you don't have the footage that shows Wabwire walking from the shooting to police. So for me, the first question you want to ask, what happened to the heavy investment into the camera program within Kampala city? Where now we are having to rely on the goodwill of footage from Raja Chambers and actually private institutions and entities. Number two, the question of who was this Indian man, first of all? Because don't just say there was a shooting. Who was this Indian man? Parliamentarians are confessing that actually these Indians here have more money than banks. That you will go there for a loan in an instant, where the bank will have, if you wanted to get 1 billion Ugandan shillings as a loan for a member of parliament, you will have to go a lot of scrutiny. In a split second, this money will be available. So you want to ask yourself the question that who are these people who are having all this money? So it brings into the deeper question, because I want to go beyond the surface of what the president asked. Is the state still in charge of Uganda? Because now you're having, what you're seeing is that these are elements of the deep state. And actually not even elements, but layers of the deep state. that you're having specific individuals of a specific community having large amounts of money bigger than the financial institutions. And these are the people who are literally controlling the business within. So for me, these are indicators, number one, of our failure to implement previous promises, okay, in terms of apparently securing the nation. But also number two, the deeper question to interrogate is the formation of the state and the layers of the deep state. And actually now what you have is that interplay. So could it be a possibility that this was a veiled attack of the forces within the deep state? Because think about it, the shooting does not happen on the first floor. How could Wabwire have moved from the floor? Actually, the minister who sits on that building at the top is who told the bodyguards that I have had a shooting downstairs. What was happening there? So you're asking yourself the question, how could this man have gone, shot from that level, walked down? When you look at the footage, he even first, after he walks out, he goes back to check whether there were any documents that were left. In all that building, there were security forces. How could they have failed to arrest him at that point? They even go, he goes back and checks. So could it have been some form of syndicated crime that is potentially, because you look at the reasons that he gave in his confession, right? He says that, look here, I was cheated by the Indian. But then in all this protection around the building, how could it have been that he was missed? How could it have been that nobody could have come out to, as an eyewitness, to say this is what happened? So could it have been a syndicated crime that is actually dealing with particular layers within the deep state? That's what I look at.
Okay, thank you very much, Counsel. I think if I could turn to my brother here, Doctor. There is we are seeing the gun violence. And during that week, I think we can discuss it before we go into a break. We are seeing, this time, it's a driver coming out to also to confess and pass a message of threatening that one day, like you said, the driver of the judiciary, of a judge, saying such a things also could happen in that department, whereby somebody could end up killing somebody as a result of poor pay. And on social media, if you are to read, because something is going to be is accumulating in one or the other, whereby I saw other people saying the housemaid will also react one or the other because he is paid poorly. So we are seeing this gentleman in the judiciary. Now I'm told he has been arrested for threatening to kill one of his bosses. I think, Doctor, you can start from there.
I think it brings me back to what Richard said, that because of the publicity around these things, we are going to see some of them multiplying. And to be sincere, social media is very explosive, and its impact on society is very big. So if you look at this, and then like when the Honorable Ngora was killed, everyone started talking about the welfare of the UPDF. And even last week in our discussion here, we said in reaction to the president's speech that he's going to phase out the allowances, and then we go back to ideology, because he doesn't want the ideology of the NRA to be distorted by people who are after money. Here we challenged, we said, no, if it is about the issues of welfare. In 1981, it was a rebel group inspired by an ideology to create a new order. Now it is a state institution where people are seeking employment, and in employment they are fighting to defend us, but they also want to survive. They want a living wage. So if a driver comes up and threatens, of course, if I was in the judiciary, I would call it indiscipline. I would not, I will act the way either Pius Vigrimana or else is acting. No, sir, you don't condone it. But I think they have a point. In the people have been discussing about the salary emoluments board, harmonization of pay of people across. Like if you go abroad, it's not so much about the papers, okay, but the time Like if a driver spends this number of hours on the road and is driving a high profile person, doesn't have time for their families, then such people can be considered for enhancement. Doesn't mean that when he's driving he's expected to have, you know, to exercise his skill he has. He's spending time there. He's also exercised to be sober all the time. And in Uganda's case, Richard can tell you, there are people who go an extra mile and send a driver who has worked the whole day to take their children to the nightclub. Last time he talked of the naked daughters. So go to places, people are naked, they have a soldier, they have a driver, people who are working the whole day. So, if I was in the judiciary, I would of course take it as indiscipline and I would act accordingly. But in reality, is that this is raising awareness that, you know, we are paying attention. We think that if you're a member of parliament, you're a big man, therefore you should earn more, okay? But then there are also other people in society who are doing equally important work, and therefore their welfare issues should also be addressed.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Now let me come to you, Mr. Richard Waguma. Isn't there any other means of addressing such issues than pre-manning somebody who has come out? Because we later came to know that the drivers, yet they are not getting 200,000 shillings, they are getting more than that. How true is that? Isn't there any other means of sitting down to talk to such people like this driver who has come out to complain, to make sure that such things are addressed than pre-manning him and either sacking him from place of work?
First of all, it would be surprising if the current leadership, doesn't matter which arm of the judiciary, if they behave differently. The current leadership of the judiciary, even when they have been elsewhere, because they have been in other positions, political and technical, they are very high-handed and quite arrogant and quite insolent. So it would be surprising if they behaved differently. So they are behaving in their selves the way they have behaved. That is the correct way to behave is very questionable for me and very highly debatable. Now, you see, I talked about copycat, the copycat crime syndrome. You see, when you are working in this area, this driver who has had the audacity, you can call it stupidity, I call it the French courage, to come out and record this and putting it out, is in pain. And perhaps thought there will be consequences, might not have known how far, but knew there would be consequences. But how many conversations does this driver have with your driver? You, the one who is acting with insolence and hard-handedness. Which means it will be your driver who will drive you into a truck. Because for them, they are at the end of their wits. They are hopeless. Their situation is hopeless. And they will say, I will go, but I will go with you. So you probably need to be checking the phone logs of this driver to see how often they have been talking. This is something they have probably discussed quite often. So that's one. The second thing is, I do not think that it would be administratively correct to just let it go. Administratively, you have to deal with this situation. Yes, you cannot let it go, because certainly there are some rules and regulations that have been flouted, definitely, by the driver and the one. But I think, for me, the deeper thing is if you have, in the same space, the driver saying, I can drive into a truck. Of course they can. Probably another one will. And so our discussion here will be different. We will not be talking about the one who threatened to. We will be talking about the one who did. So that for me would be a concern. Like the people now, if you saw, I think it was the Inspector General who was quoted by, I think, the Observer, that he has a lot of requests for people to change their guards. And they are asking for people they know. Who says the one you know will not, still, when they are facing the same conditions, will not lose it and shoot you? I don't know. So it's important that the cry, and you know the driver was not even talking about the little pay, was talking about comparative. Yeah, and Dr. Werike talked about this thing that has been going on. Can we have things that alleviate people's challenges? Can we have a rationalization exercise for pay? So that people don't feel this desperate and hopeless about where they are stationed in life and the pay differences. I think one of the calculations was that judges get 97 times more than the drivers. I don't know how correct that is, but if it is, why? And so rationalization. The second thing, for me, the things that ease people's lives, the things that reduce desperation, the things that we talk about. Now, if you find a very senior health person saying we are actually considering abolishing even the little free so that everybody pays. And they say, but we have been crying for health insurance, which would alleviate the problem with perhaps less trouble. Why is this one being rejected? So these schemes that balance, that for us, our children are the ones who are more likely to qualify for the government scholarship at university. And a lot of parents feel very desperate after struggling to take their children through high school, and they can't go anywhere beyond. But our children who go to the very good schools, where they pay a few millions, are the ones more likely to qualify for the scholarships, because the method we are using now is who has passed best. And passing best is almost invariably skewed, again, towards the well-to-do. Yes. So for me, Kajangu, looking at the talk of this driver as in isolation is missing a huge national crisis that has been evolving before our eyes. And I think we need to urgently look into these welfare issues and the sense of, I'm looking for the correct word, the sense of disadvantage that large groups of people feel in this country. I will finally say this, Kajangu. There is a government agency that is recruiting a procurement officer right now. Very big, one of the big government agencies. And they were very clear. I was speaking to the board guys. And they said, however good a candidate is, if the candidate is from Western Uganda, even if they are the best they will not be allowed. So they even won't be allowed on the interview. That sense of disadvantage by other people can be manifested in such things.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Maguma, for the input. I want to come to you, Council. We've seen some of your colleagues, I think you have read or you have heard, coming out to give legal defense to our colleague who came out to threaten the driver. Yeah. From you as a lawyer, how do you see such a thing? Because we are seeing you coming out to defend somebody who is threatening to finish the life of somebody.
I think you want to go back to, first of all, the foundation really in this context is rooted in what Article 28 of the Constitution talks about, the right to a fair hearing. And the right to a fair hearing presupposes that you are innocent until proven guilty or until you confess that you are guilty. So at all scores and at all levels, there should be a recognition that this individual has a right to a fair hearing. Now, most importantly, when you're dealing with an administrative body, at least again the Constitution gives that perspective, that there should be a right to fair hearing even before administrative bodies. Now, beyond just the expression of the discontentment, you want to look at whether this specific individual has sought all avenues of airing out their discontentment. Because you see, when you look at only what Dr. here has talked about, the behavior of Pius Bijinimana, the Permanent Secretary, it only assumes one thing, that number one, all legal avenues are open, that all avenues of addressing discontentment have been given, and they are fair, they are speedy, they are efficient. But what you forget is that you're talking about a criminal justice system which is, number one, underfunded, number two, inefficient, and I think also you want to look at the background of those who are implementing. You look at, for example, without any prejudice, for example, the constitution, say, of the Supreme Court bench and some of the individuals who are there. You look at the Court of Appeal. You look at some of the High Court judges. But even before you get to some of those, look at the basic administrative units. Where could this officer have gone potentially to address his queries, and they are certain that they could be addressed? When you're in a justice system where a Supreme Court justice, Elizabeth Chisache, comes out to give a dissenting judgment in an electoral petition, and the Chief Justice comes out to stop, you're talking about if a Supreme Court justice cannot get justice, what do you think about a driver of a Chief Justice? Do you then think that they will potentially get some form of justice? Could this be possibly only one of what you would call a whistleblower's case? Where do we then put the question of the protection of whistleblowers? Because it's coming out as a whistleblower. He's saying, look here, I'm raising alarm. There is a fire in the house, there is smoke in the house. So my friend, there must be some fire here. And then you're saying, no. Actually, we are going to handle it administratively. This is an issue of handling humanely. And if you're talking about this conversation, where yesterday there was a launch of the Uganda Human Rights Commission report, you're talking about implementation of Chapter 4 of the Constitution, okay, the Bill of Rights. The backdrop of that is treat people humanely. You know, the law is not some static, unbendable, unpliable structure. No, it should be implemented in the context of the events that are happening. If I talk about the Human Rights Commission, where potentially this gentleman could have gone to seek redress, where the chairperson of the Human Rights Commission came out to front the same argument that Richard Dia was making, that she could not hold the human rights, she couldn't call for human rights committee meetings because she feared that some of the committee members have guns. Now, Supreme Court Justice is on fire. Chief Justice is complaining on funding. Human Rights Commission cannot hold because of gun violence and threats. So, seriously, it is beyond, again, the legal framework.
Council, shall continue with the debate of that. It's a very good debate that we need also to continue with. But we have to go for a short break. I want to remind you that next Friday we shall be going to Mbarara on the crusade at Kacheka Stadium. And the Minister of State for Transport, Musa Ichweru, has assured Ugandans that that week, next week, the road to Katonga Bridge will be somewhere to pass. Let's go
for pedestrians
and go.
For pilgrims.
Our dear viewers, welcome back from that short break, and we welcome you back to the dialogue today, the 20th of May, the year of our Lord. Very many things that we have discussed in the first hour. Now we are going for the second hour, where we shall be discussing other national issues that happened during the week. And we want to see our input as far as the national budget is concerned, which was passed into law yesterday on the floor of Parliament. I can't forget reminding you again that come 26 we shall be in Mbarara Kacheka Stadium. Mr. Baguma, that is the road that you take.
No, that is my home.
Not
just a road. That is my home, my friend.
Yes.
So I am thinking that I should actually host you at my house.
Yes, Kacheka Stadium.
It's just near my home, there, walkable distance.
Yes.
Should we host you guys?
Expect even come out. We shall get annoyed and come out with a car from that side. Okay, we are going ahead with our program, the dialogue. I'm sitting in for Apollo Tsime, who is doing some other national duties out there as far as our country is concerned. Yesterday, the Parliament of Uganda passed the 52 trillion budget, close to almost $16 billion. Mr. Baguma, The national budget yesterday was passed under the new amendment Financial Act, which was passed way back in 2015. You remember it was spearheaded by the late permanent secretaries and Minister of Finance, the late Kasani and the late Muhakani's, whom we buried about 2 weeks or 3 weeks back. These are the people who were behind that law that amended the Financial Act, where we see budget is presented on the floor of Parliament, passed before it is, unlike in the past, whereby the budget would be read on the floor of Parliament, then it goes back to the committee, then it comes back to pass. And you should know that the government of Uganda work on a cash budget. And you remember how the challenges, by the time we could be passing the budget either in October or in December, you could find that the year is almost coming to an end. But now, with this new law, we are seeing the budget being passed, we know what is there. And come June, the budget will be presented on the floor of Parliament. The President of Uganda will be presenting the budget to Parliament through his Minister of Finance, Matia Kasaija. When you hear the name Matia Kasaija, don't ask me any questions. But this time we are focusing on the national budget. The Mabat thing, that one will come later. So the 52 trillion budget is already passed. And on 7th of next month, there will be State of the Nation, where Parliament will be making 3 years. We want also to account, they need also to account to us as the voters, as supporters of members of Parliament, to see what they have done. What is the government of Uganda, the NRM, the ruling, what have they done in this? They need to tell us what this financial year 2022-2023 budget, how have they performed with it? All these questions need to be asked, and we need answers as far as the national budget is concerned. But with yesterday's budget, which was passed, my colleagues who are on the panel here, very many things were asked, especially to the first family. Office of the President, State House. You know, people tend to differentiate these things. There is Office of the President and there is State House. So all those things were, I'm told, they were given, I would call it a lion's share. Minister of Education was given a lion's share. We are seeing Minister of Works also given some sort of percentage to manage roads in Uganda. But we saw the Minister of Finance, Mr. Baguma, and Dr. Plus, our council here, Matia Kasaija, presented a budget on the floor of Parliament. But we saw something happening on the floor of Parliament whereby another thing was passed behind the doors and it was being brought into the national budget. And we have not seen such things, and they wanted it to be passed without passing the scrutiny. You know, every work is done in the committees of Parliament. And this time around, we are seeing something passing behind the door, coming on the floor of Parliament as a core agenda to make sure that it is put in the national budget. Now, which has resulted into the 52 trillion shillings. Remember, we were on 40 something. We see a lot of money now. I don't know, our economy is growing, but I think this one we shall be looking at it as we debate about the budget which was passed yesterday. Many things were introduced in the budget, and if you followed the proceedings on the floor of Parliament by Honorable Amongi, she was not happy about what was happening and had to use a voice which was, I would call, was unparliamentary. But as a father in the house or the head of the family, if you don't use a high voice, I don't think that things in the family can be in order. So I applaud still the Speaker of Parliament for what she did. And we saw the following day, the budget was again presented on the floor of Parliament, and it passed through after scrutinizing it. Let me start with you, Baguma, there, the national budget. What is your take on that budget? We have seen, if we could start from the first family, because Ugandans have a lot of hope in the first family, the head of state. We are seeing people debating about the president should not put on, the president that when he was in the bush he was putting on one shirt or something like that. How come this day, every day he has to put on
He has to spend
suits,
1 million shillings on his dressing.
for the wardrobe of the president. cooking for the president, the food for the president that he eats in the State House. What I know, he doesn't eat alone. Every day, people keep from Kiruhura, from where they are at State House, all of them. They are complaining about the 500 for electricity, for water. But the people who go there, if you could see the 350 members of parliament who go out there, I don't think that they go when they are prepared. You know what I'm talking about. So all these things, as a president, he has to donations and other area I've seen being talked about. I want you to hear your word about this budget. Is it a friendly budget? Is it a high-class budget? Or it is Muntu Wawasi will benefit out of it?
First of all, the country's resources have been growing over the years. I think no one debates that. Our budget has not been shrinking. And even the contributions from the domestic collections have not been going down. They have been going up over the years. All indicators of growth, whether they are from critical think tanks or supportive groups or government, international interagency organizations, World Bank, whatever, have shown a positive trend. Sometimes it is over-optimistic and we don't reach the strides, but we go. Now, the world has had a very interesting phenomena where all economies, it doesn't matter how powerful, all governments had to come and unlock their reserves and intervene because all economies were going down because of the shutdown. So things are starting to look up everywhere, including, I think, in this country. And you see, I start with the general because people tend to pick out, they cherry pick. By the way, people only talk about like 1 trillion or 2 trillion.
Yes.
Of the 50 trillion, people only focus on cherry pick the inciting or the sensational bits, and then go with that. So that's one of the things. The second thing is that for me, the budget has been increasingly being reductionist in one of the areas which I think is the most critical, where we should be investing. And I think that is the agricultural sector. I think the agricultural sector, even when you talk about value addition, when you talk about industrialization, that should relate to our agriculture, I think we have been reducing the money that goes to this sector, the attention and what, and including, of course, you are talking about livestock. So, for instance,
as per you made the declaration which we are signatory to it.
Yeah, forget about the declarations. We have been the declaration on health, the declaration on agriculture. Forget the declarations. Globally, actually, perhaps if you have 190 something countries, you have only 2 or 3 countries that satisfy declarations. So and you know, because of my other work, I have been part of these processes of declarations. So sometimes I don't mind them too much, but they are good as advocacy documents. But for me, the fact that we have comparatively, increasingly not focused on agriculture as much as possible, and we tend to argue to be convincing that when you put money in roads, it is for agriculture. When you put money in security, it's for agriculture. Okay, fine. Yes, if you want to argue like that, then everything is intertwined. But I think there should be money focused. For example, let me tell you one of the things that I am quite disappointed about is our lack of investment in climate smart, climate responsive agriculture. You see, climate change is here. Flooding will happen, the rain patterns will be, droughts will happen. This is a global fact. It is anchored in science, and we need to put money there. Yes, otherwise we will keep paying serious prices. So that for me is one of my major disappointments. The other one is in our investment in human resource. Let me tell you, Kajangu.
Yes.
This is something I cry about all the time whenever I go on air. It doesn't matter where. If you have 1 million children entering school, and you have less than 100,000 children going out at the end of the pipe, it means 90% or so of the country's human resource is half-baked or unbaked. How do you, for God's sake, hope to transform this society when more than 90% are not baked, are not equipped, are not skilled? It's such a disaster. It's not paid attention to. 1 million children enter primary school, 70,000 whatever, get out. Where are the other 900 plus every year? And for me, these are the things that I think we need to talk about. So then the 70,000 or whatever who get out, there is very dismal investment in the quality. So you are the area where your population depends most, which is agriculture, is not given that attention. The one is where you have the children, the millions of the country, and then the population which is not baked or half baked has extremely poor health care. So it's a stunted, you have a stunted population and therefore a stunted economy. And that's the problem. Let me go to the other one. I will talk about State House. I know that is the most sexy for people to talk about. I don't want to be taken with the water flow. Yes. Otherwise, why do we come here? We must also put a spotlight.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the other thing, Jangu. The debt crisis that we have. We need to focus. We might State House-ize the economy, but we need to talk about the debt crisis. These gentlemen whom I'm seated here, including you, are the type that need to borrow in order to have their development projects move. Once the government is borrowing all the money that is available in the country to be borrowed, it means me and you are never going to find capitalization for our little projects. But remember, it is me and you, when we combine our little economic projects, that it's like a stream. Small tributaries going into a river are the ones which will deliver this economy. Kajangu, we have a debt crisis in this country.
I want to give you information, Mr. Baguma. The promise we got when they were passing the budget that this coming financial year, 2022, 2023-2024, government of Uganda will not borrow. I think they will stick to their word because we have surpassed the borrow, because now we have gone over 50% of our borrowing as per international standards.
First of all, the borrowing that is done, that is going to happen, is going to be the supplementary. It's borrowing. Yeah. That is going to be the supplementary. But for me, I am happy to bet with you or any one of our viewers on that fact. I'm happy to bet that we will borrow the financial year that is coming. We are going to borrow. That is a bet I am not afraid of getting into at all. And we shall come here and we shall be discussing the borrowing. Okay,
let me go to Council. Council, how do you see this budget? I think you have captured a few things. And in your area of trade, that is the judiciary. We are seeing it is every day we hear the Chief Justice crying about we need more judges, backlog is killing them. But we are seeing again the small budget which is being allocated to them, even the money they asked, they have not given it them. Where do you see judiciary in the next financial year? And we are going to see more workers crying of the same. Because we have seen the upper equilibrium is up, they are doing well in terms of their payments and the retirement packages. But the lower section down there, the driver who was crying, the one we discussed in our first hour, is still a very big problem according to what they have allocated to them.
So I think I would love to agree with what Richard has said. Number one, the budget discussion has not been given a proper front-face discussion because of the sensationalization by the media.
Yes.
For example, you picking one isolated item, which is the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, as a general representation, does not really speak of the wholesomeness of the budget. However, it raises critical issues of what our prioritization is in terms of the budgetary context. Number one, the issues that inform budgetary allocation stretch beyond these cherry-picked items. For example, if you look at the budgetary report presented by the minister and the minority report presented by the opposition, the budgetary report presented by the government, which is what we call the majority report, really mentions that government right now is focusing on 4 areas, none of which has a human rights-based approach. I think the specific theme of the budget is focused more on economic recovery as opposed to a human rights-based approach as its priority. And that's one of the key arguments of the minority report of the opposition. Number 2, you look at the nature of, if you read the majority report, the minister says, for example, one of the biggest underscoring things they're talking about is that they have made sure that they comply with the Public Finance and Management Act in regards to specifically harmonization of budget priorities. And when you read through their report, all they state are the clear legal obligations without anything new. Now, I like what the minority report eventually highlights.
The one which are presented by
Honorable Semuju.
Chira.
He says, number one, there is very big deception in terms of harmonization of the priorities. Because remember, the experts here will tell you, Dr. here and Richard will tell you, that we have since taken a stand that we are going to move away from the sector-based approach to the program-based approach. When you look at the nature of the budget which is presented, there is no reconciliation between sector-based approach and program-based approach. Actually, it is more of sector-based approach. That was one of the biggest arguments of the opposition. Number 2, the compliance measures within the Public Finance and Management Act. For example, how many of the state-owned enterprises have presented their budgets? I was reading the majority report. The minister says there are actually 65 state-owned enterprises. The opposition says, no, actually there are 70, and out of the 70, only 35 have presented their budgets. That's why you talked about the sneaking in. Okay? So, authentic justice should not only look at what is allocated to the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Authentic justice in terms of the budgetary context means that number 1, is there compliance with the Public Finance and Management Act? Is there harmonization of the budgetary priorities? Okay? Is there, for example, when you look at the minority report, it gives you a plethora of non-compliant government projects, which right now are being allocated more money for retooling. Yet many of them are going to expire by June 2023. But there is still more resources that are being allocated there. Authentic justice again, because my interest as a lawyer would be that, for example, something Richard mentioned here, that how much of our budget focuses on human capital development.
Yes.
Now, the parish development model has been what they have called their golden bullet for the year 2022-2023. And actually it
Just
continues.
not to interrupt you,
Yes.
but you know that even the president has written to the prime minister to say certain individuals in parliament should be arrested for talking about PDM.
And you know,
In fact, Mr. Maguma, to be specific, and that is Honorable Rutamaguza and the
Mwanga Chivunga.
So when you talk about rights, I mean, really, you are spot on.
Now, you know, you look at it this way. Parish development model, which is a key priority, leave alone the niceties that come with it. Look at, it has no legal framework that formed it. You're talking about a government program which is going to suffer the same pain as Bonabaga Gawale, Youth Livelihood Program, Women Empowerment Program, among other programs. So you're having a program called Parish Development Model, and right now you're struggling to ask yourself, who are you going to hold accountable for the resources which have been mismanaged? And actually, even when you read the majority report, they confess that resources have been mismanaged, over 1 trillion has been allocated, but there has been mismanagement. And what they're doing right now, they're even putting an incentive for those who stole money to return it. That yes, you stole money for Parish Development Model, but you see, we are going to incentivize you when you return the money that you stole. These are the arguments we have been making from the start. That as long as we don't have a proper legal framework to inform the main government policy or program or agenda, then you are into problems. So for me, the question of the realization of rights in the context of my area of trade stretches beyond the allocation of the budget to the Ministry of Justice. It goes to the very detail of what informs those allocations. Harmonization, prioritization, the political goodwill. I think when you read the Minority Report, you look at some of the loopholes. Beyond, and I like again what he mentioned, go beyond the sensationalization of only the presidential allocations. Go into, for example, the project they mentioned for Mr. Rabogo. Look into I think the company in Matuga, which is focusing on pharmaceuticals. These are the critical areas where a lot of resources are being allocated. But finally, I like something that I think what they called the lack of the financial impropriety that came with the budget. That, for example, they are saying we're having 52 trillion being allocated. Okay? Let me actually just get the specifics so that we can give the readers proper information. And let me just get the Minority Report here. It could perhaps give a proper context of what I'm talking about, the financial impropriety. So, they mention that, just give me a minute.
Okay, as I will come to you as you get that. There is something Dr. Council has mentioned about we've been most of our investors in Uganda, they've been crying that they are not taken care of. He mentioned of Rwabogo. And he has been given some amount of money to promote coffee, to improve coffee in Uganda. Do you think this is a right move or it's a wrong move where local investors are being helped? Because wherever that money is given to a foreign investor, nobody would complain.
Now, for me, the challenge I have in relation to that is that we have statutory institutions that are charged with the responsibility to attract investment. For instance, we have the Uganda Investment Authority. We also have the Export Promotions Board that's in charge of promoting exports. But many times they are crying about the budgets to facilitate their effective delivery of the mandate. So it looks like in everything we are creating outfits outside the, I could say even outside the law, because he said they lack, okay, the legal backing. You create an outfit, and in this case, most times with relatives, to ensure that you are doing something. I call it creating parallel institutions that outcompete, and Richard called it fighting for visibility, limelight, who is doing what, and then we forget about institutions that we can clearly hold accountable. And also, over and over again, when we monitor Parliament, there are these things to do with compensations of traders. You find money has been, billions has been given to different people without coming through a clear process. But if we are to either bail out investors or help support investments, let's have a system where we have these budgets and all business people can apply, and we see their innovations that they can add to the community, to the country. But like I had a lot of noise about Atiak. We have been giving a lot of money to Atiak Sugar. I mean, for the last 3 years, government accepts that actually there are 3 or 4 years, it's not making anything. And at some point it was closed. And then we continue pumping the resources there. So maybe for me we are getting the priorities wrong. And I also agree with the council about the scattering of the budget. I've seen, I saw the percentages in mindset change and community mobilization. We told the people here that you can send trillions of money under PDM, but if people are not well mobilized, if you don't invest in mindset change, then at the end of the day, this money will go to wastage. So what amount do you put where, when? I saw the percentage for mindset change is 0.006% of the budget. which I consider very small given the problem that we have in the country.
Doctor, before we go further into that, there is something I tried. The president of Uganda, this parliament, the first year of parliament, he would try to use other means of promoting coffee internationally to a higher grade. And he used that investor's name, I'm forgetting.
Tineti?
Tineti. So, don't you think that the president now is more brighter to use the right procedure of passing through parliament to enhance the coffee sector?
Yeah, but the way I know the presidential initiative on exports and investments, which is being led by Rwagogo, is not only targeting coffee. It is a broader thing. Like I saw them in London, they were talking about even opening offices to woo investors in Eastern Europe and so forth. But me, I wouldn't agree. We have dealt with people from some of these countries, Romania, Bulgaria, where you may go and rent an office there and you may never attract anything. Now, if it comes to issues of coffee, we had a huge discussion in this country when Pineti came. People say there are players, existing players, like where I come from, Bugis Cooperative Union, there are others, Chagulanyi Coffee, there are others already established, employing people. If it is about value addition, probably if you supported these ones. But I remember even the president confessing that actually Pineti was not in the coffee. He's the one who convinced Pineti to enter into coffee. So meaning that this investor even lacks the expertise in the coffee. And of course, we're also seeing a problem in medical tourism where the Pineti had gone. So I don't believe, sometimes I believe there's certain groups that are competing for limelight and they think they can leverage on state resources to leave their mark for publicity. But at the end of the day, when you go and do an evaluation, you may not find anything on the ground.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Before I go back to Mr. Baguma, Council, you had something that you...
Yes. I was just getting you a part of the demonstration of what they call the falsification of the resource envelope. So the argument here is that government says that there is 52 trillion which is being allocated, and out of which 25.1 trillion is for discretionary resources available for spending. Now, the statutory obligations that are supposed to be achieved, okay, are as follows. Number one, for pension, you're supposed to have 278 billion, gratuity 115 billion, total wages 6.9 trillion, contingency funds 240 billion. Now, the total of the discretionary resources gives us a total of 17.5 trillion. That's out of the other 52 billion. Okay, 52 trillion that they are talking about. So when you look at what has to be spent on discretionary resources vis-a-vis what the government is saying is spending as part of discretionary resources, there are very big discrepancies. So already in terms of allocation of the resource envelope, there is falsified information. You asked the doctor here a very good question about, for example, the argument of value addition vis-a-vis the coffee production. I think the last time I was here, we were talking about, I think it was early last year or end of last year, where we had this whole the government pulling out of the international coffee trading system. Now, you're seeing people, the Rwabogos, the Wekesas in London pitching, but then they are pitching to an international community where Uganda has deliberately isolated itself. And even within the Ugandan terrain itself, is working towards a coffee law which is suppressive of the people within who are supposed to be investing in the local resources. So, what I'm trying to show you is that there is lack of organized intention and political goodwill actually to achieve what they call the priorities. If that was the case, then there could have been proper harmonization of the budget to achieve the end of what they are saying has to be achieved. Because as long as you move away from if you say that you are going for a program-based approach, not a sector-based approach, and you depart from that, all the others become footnotes. because you've departed from your original, what you call your original doctrine of the budgetary discussion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to go to you, Mr. Baguma. The issue of collection. You have seen what they have allocated to Uganda Revenue Authority to collect. And with this one, they have the biggest percentage to collect the money to make sure that our budget runs come 2024. 2022, 2023, they have not hit the target up to now. And we are remaining with a few weeks to go into another budget. Do you think URA is going to hit the target when they have failed even to complete this one? I doubt whether the few days which are remaining to the reading of the budget, that is before, let's say, for 1st of July, because that's when our budget will start operating. Do you think that URA will be able to collect this money according to what even the tax they have introduced?
No, I think it's hard to see that URA, like in the past.
Oh, it is going to be a burden to Ugandans.
No,
Because
like in the past.
see very many things being introduced to make sure that they collect money to finance this budget.
No, I don't
before
think.
you come to that, the donor dependency, it is almost the going down. Because in the last financial year, it was 19%. And we see our economy is growing up to 80 plus. But though we had forced ourselves into that, I can't mention it here because it's happened. But our economy were not yet there. But we found ourselves there, but they said, no, you are not yet there. They told us we first go.
Oh, middle class, of course.
Prepare yourself properly.
Middle class.
So the donor dependency, I can see we are growing, our economy is growing, but back home on the ground to the people down there's nothing.
No, I think like in the previous years, it is difficult to see how the Uganda Revenue Authority will hit the targets that it's given. I have said here, and I need to be proved wrong, maybe I don't understand some fundamentals, but I've said here that the basis for allocating targets for our incomes and our budget is our need to spend, not on the realistic foundation of what we can actually do. So I think we say these are the things we want to deal with, so the budget must be that amount, and then we will force our tax revenue, our revenue streams to try and reach that. So I say, well, it is unsupported. I keep saying that the targets of URA are unsupported scientifically. That's one. The second thing is that certainly the Uganda Revenue Authority has been strenuously over the years trying to achieve the targets. In fact, if you see, there is no time at all where they have gone below what they had collected the previous year. So that also shows that these people, whoever it is there, they try really to do. We condemn them. A tax collector is never, even in Jesus' time, is never positively looked at. I think there's a couple of things that must happen. One is the structure of the revenue body, the revenue collecting body, the Uganda Revenue Authority, must be transformed. Now, there are two things that happen. One, it is very militaristic. The approach is militaristic. We have power. In fact, if you look at the act, because the Finance Act, the lawyer will tell you, gets amended annually. I think it's the one which has automatic amendment every year. So every time they smuggle in things that strangle people. And you see, it is because of the pressure of the targets that we give them, which are unsupported and always unrealistic. But they are very political targets. And because of the, I usually don't know how to say this, but because of the extreme wasteful life that we live, the leadership, our leaders, they live really extremely wasteful and very shamefully, extravagant lives. So we put pressure on this. The cost of meeting these very lavish lifestyles of the leaderships at all levels, really, for me, they must be condemned, but condemnation is not good. They must be swept. We must have a wave of sweeping this. And then, of course, then you force the hemorrhage. the steering, the routing, which people like to call corruption and whatever the nice words. So that creates a problem. So the URA has a crisis. You push on it a target which is unrealistic, and we expect them to deliver on that. So first, the militaristic approach must be transformed. The institution must be transformed. The second thing is the view that a potential taxpayer is a criminal. The way I see, this is what I see out, and when I talk to taxpayers, when I talk to tax agents, when I talk to tax consultants, the way that the people, particularly the young ones we have put there now, and you know the young ones really are the generation we have raised, our children, or our young ones, we are such an impunity group, untouchable, ononkorachi, that's the view. And then of course the steering that happens, the crude steering that happens, so everyone is looked at as a potential criminal. They are telling lies, they want to cheat, so those two approaches, I think for me that's the mindset, the institutional mindset change of the collection, the URA. The other one, you see, what happens is the taxpayer has pain because of this shameful wastefulness and extravagance of the ones who take charge of our taxes. Kajangu, it pains to take 30% of your money, and you see that somebody is spending it on the items you were talking about. Yes, that they will spend it on their children. Yeah, that you know, why? Those are the questions. And then you ask for them, with all the properties they have, how much do they actually pay? You don't see them reflected in those ones who pay, and pay quite a lot. Let me tell you that the biggest defaulting agencies, you check them. They are the government agencies. They are the biggest. You give allocation in the budget for them to pay taxes. They use the money for other things, and they are the biggest defaulters. And then you and me are supposed to be straining to pay. Then you will have tax evasion, you will have tax avoidance, and all the other tricks. And so this is the combination that we must be talking about. And that for me is the conversations that we must be having. We can debate the shirt of 1 million shillings. Kajangu, there are shirts of more than... I remember the debate when people were debating the cost of a pen at $100. The Bank of Uganda. Yes. I buy pens when I travel. $100. The good pens, you guys have flown through Dubai or Amsterdam. Check the pens. And they are more than 100.
They still do the same thing.
They are more than $100. So why do you want to have a conference of governors of central banks, and you give them big? Really? I think it's also, and I can understand the people's pain, because for them 350 is the monthly pay. But I am not going to give a governor, I am now producing a plaque to give to Parliament. When they have a nutrition week, I convened the Nutrition Civil Society Alliance, as you know. I want to give a plaque to the speaker for the work they are doing to promote. But I went to the market to ask for this plaque awarded to Parliament. They want 570,000 shillings. I didn't know that those things can go. But I can't give them a less. So I give them what? A piece of paper certificate? Really?
Just to interject a bit, in relation to that, we were having a debate. I think when the Honorable Semuju raised the issue of 500 million for water, I said there is an Entebbe State House where visitors are coming every day. And then there is Mbale State Lodge, there is Baralega where the president has been meeting Lango leaders, Fort Portal, and so forth. So when I computed, divide by the number of days in the year, I saw that actually the water bill is 1,400,000. So I was like, you mean a president of a country cannot spend 1.4 million on water? With all, as we talk, General Saleh is in Moroto on security issues, and he's meeting Karamoja leaders, military people, and so forth in State Lodge in Moroto. So we should not distort the debate by looking at the minor things. If you are telling me the president is spending 147 billion, like I've seen it, 147 or 187 on donations, that one I will condemn it, because I know it promotes patronage, that everyone has to go to State House to receive money from the president. And yet this budget is so huge, it could go and change the health sector.
Okay.
But if it comes to electricity, water, clothes, I will not waste.
Baguma, I'm giving you again.
Yeah.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Please.
And so you make it difficult if you expect me to speak about Odrek, because for historical reasons I will not speak about Odrek.
We call it human interest.
How do I speak? Really, yeah. This is a high school friend all the time. I will not talk. What I am going to talk about is what I talked about the other time. That in my view, in my analysis, the point is to dominate and take over the coffee sector. Why? Because the coffee sector is among the largest income generating sector in this country over the years. We studied it, our parents studied it, and we know. It has been a democratized sector that people were getting money in. Of course, it is dominated at the higher level by foreign companies, but there are several, and people go. The people in charge, the first family and the people around, understand that you must take charge in order to take the benefits, because it's a lion's share of the benefits. So the people have to see the connection. That you come, you do what was it called, Divinity Union? I think. I don't know if people remember Divinity Union.
I remember it.
Yeah. They move to take over coffee. They fight over the Bahefizi Cooperative Union, which they have lost consistently, the Bugisu Cooperative Union. The taking over of Wamara and Banyankore Kweterana. For me, this is a quarter of a century move. And then the mistakes that happen, first of all, you make the Coffee Development Authority. These experts, PhD guys, you make them argue that it is wrong for us to be international coffee system.
Mr. Baguma, in a minute, since you talked to Mr. Wabogo being your classmate, the concern of members of parliament and Ugandans who are watching us out there is the expertise of Mr. Wabogo. Others say that he doesn't have even a garden of coffee. How can he come to be an expert?
I don't know. I have a garden of coffee. That's why I'm interested. So that's why I am passionate about coffee. Because I am invested in coffee a bit. And we have a plan. We have started a move. I think Dr. Werike will have told you about it. Because the elite in this country must benefit from the value of the coffee. We're handing it over to. By the way, let me tell you, do you know one of the things we import in this country is coffee husks? Coffee husks. We import tons and tons of coffee husks. Do you know what it is used for? For furnaces in factories. And for us, we are looking at this value. And so, for me, Kajangu, coffee must be dominated. It's been a running theme. And then the mistakes that are made, we pull out of this. Then we bring an Italian honorable lady who is going to be our Benjo and savior for coffee sector. It started, it is negatively run. Then now you bring it in this other way. But that move must be seen in the context of the quarter of a century move to take over this sector. And these things we debate. We debate them privately sometimes. You were talking about the Export Promotion Board and the investment. They are all under this initiative now. Yes, the one who summons them and directs them what to do is the one who is the head of the initiative. And so these things must be seen in the context of takeover, of domination, of taking over, of capture. That has been happening. To the sectors, the mining sector was the land. Oh yeah, the land has been taken over. It doesn't matter all the government land, ranches, farms, forests, national parks. This has to be the fisheries sector. So Kajang, that's why I say for me, when you want me to talk about the shot of the president, is only that then it should be expanded to show the hemorrhage, the stealing, to show the abuse, to show the looting that has been happening over the years and the takeover of the key economic sectors of the economy. And of course you might have the means of violence. This is what you have been talking about. Of course you have the means of violence to subdue, dominate, intimidate, but you have to do that sustainably. And it is extremely, extremely, extremely expensive. And so you have to hide the money in all these things.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Baguma. I want to come back to my colleague here, the council. Uganda was hit by COVID-19. I thought as Ugandans, they learned a lesson. And according to what the president has been preaching out there is the issue of extravagance, especially in government institutions. In your debate before, in the middle there, you talked about, I picked something like about statutory bodies, which there was something merger. Now we see they are being given a budget. The institutions which were supposed to be scrapped, they are being merged. So I want you to talk about in this budget. I see a lot of extravagance coming back. A budget tea, travel abroad is being also budgeted for. Where do you see this budget in this extravagance? Where's there are urgent things which need to be attended to?
I think you want first of all to get a historical perspective based on the question you asked. For example, the COVID-19 terms. 2021, when we were almost in the middle of the pandemic, transitioning into the reopening of the economy, the theme of the budget of 2021 was recapitalization of the Ugandan economy. The key factor in the recapitalization of the Ugandan economy was that there had to be resources which had to be given to the Uganda Development Bank to recapitalize the bank. Now, these resources were borrowed from the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the African Development Bank. When you read the report that was presented by the Public Accounts Committee then to the Parliament, the main argument was that the resources which had to be allocated for the recapitalization of UDB were actually given to select individual investors, among which include Mr. Kamwesi of the Kamwesi hostels, and the resources were mismanaged. Okay? So are there any lessons that we learned from that time? If there was any, number one was that don't be open about the expenditure of the resources you borrow. That was one of the things. Number two, I want to help my brother Richard here, who has historical connections with Mr. Rwabuogo. Actually, the challenge is not with Mr.
Disclaimer, human interest.
Yes, you see, the
No,
challenge,
because you see, we are not blood brothers, but when you are these friends from childhood, you are
yes,
brothers.
there is a sense of comradeship really here. But you see, I think the argument is not about Mr. Rwabuogo as an individual. The argument here is that, look here, State House is being given a lot of resources, right? The coffee value development chain has previously had an allocation of resources which was given openly. But now it has been rechanneled to State House under a classified budget. And that budget is being given to Mr. Rwabuogo. So the main argument of the opposition as I read it is that, look here, you're using State House as a conduit. And I like the statement they quoted from Mr. Binaisa. I wasn't alive then, probably my colleagues would have been alive. But he said that State House was a clearing agency for him, which has now been taken to a higher level. You talk about expenditure with this current budget, that's what it looks like. So the biggest challenge in this budget is that, number one, you're pulling out resources previously allocated openly, you're making them classified. Because then the discretion of Parliament is limited, their powers are limited to question this budget. So expenditure goes that, extravagance goes that way. Number two, the topic we began with earlier on, the gun violence that is rising up. If you remember at the Requiem Mass at Kololo of the late Minister Engola Okello, the president made a statement and said that if the soldiers in DRC are not being given extra resources, payment, then why should bodyguards of VIPs be given extra payment? But in the current budget, you know what is happening? The Prime Minister is having a budget of over 800 million for his guards.
No, let me tell you. Look at the budget closely.
Yes.
Every ministry, every government agency, you are talking about the authorities and what? They have a budget for security.
Yes.
Each one of them. Yes, because the ED of each of the government agencies has a pickup full of people in front of them.
Yeah. So now you find that there is inconsistency even in the political goodwill. The president is saying, why should you guard VIPs? In fact, the resource, their welfare should come from their unit bases. But now in the budget, you're finding a contradictory thing. Then finally, let's finalize with this. He talked about the question of the financial hemorrhage. And you see again that goes beyond the pettiness, which Dr. here and Richard have mentioned. It goes to the very core, for example, Right now, in terms of compliance of Public Finance and Management Act, there is what is called the contingencies fund. Up till now, both majority report and minority report confess that the contingencies fund has not been implemented. Now, because of that, you have to keep on borrowing and borrowing more and mismanaging resources.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. A very big thank you to my team today. The dialogue, it has been a well-informed team. In as far as budget is concerned, I think we shall be able to have another time to discuss with you on such a things. This is the dialogue which happens every Saturday. In the studios, I had a doctor, not a medical doctor. Don't ask for me that you want Panadol, doctor. doctor.
Yeah, let's have correct
Wanda.
assumptions for the budget to work. Let's have budget discipline.
Yes.
The themes that the IGG talked about.
Yeah, with time,
10 trillion.
Not our,
Yes. So as I conclude, those are take homes.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Then we have Council Simon and our brother Richard Waguma, the communications person whom I have worked with in many things. And I must thank you for viewing our program and listening out there where you are. And I can't forget reminding you that on 26th, that is next Friday, we shall be in Kachaka Stadium for a crusade with Pastor Aloysius Mijingo and other pastors that will converge on that pitch to preach the word of God. My name is Moses Kajango, standing in for Apollo Tsime, who will be with you on Saturday, come Saturday next week. Now, we allow you to go for other programs that are coming in, like sports that is coming next. Thank you very much, and have a lovely weekend.